Hi there, Randy Green here. We have had a little bit of gap in time, but that is suitable when we are here I am here trying to finish the course material for the Template Science course 2. We are in video 7 and we are working with the text material where I'm going to talk about how does it actually work when we build via the principles, the rules and the laws. And that means we are on page 5 where I'll go over one more time the rules, the laws, the principles, but this time connecting them to perception levels. And why do I want to do that? Why is that important? And this is where it gets a little bit, perhaps too much fantasy for most people, but I will try and take you through it because it is important. And I know many of you are not having these glimpses of being outside of reality, so to speak, and looking in and thinking, what is going on? I know many of you are very, very submerged into it still because you have been for a long time, and therefore it's difficult to look at it from the outside. But I've been bestowed with that gift, quote unquote, because is it really a gift to know that you are stuck in something where you don't belong, that you are trapped in something that you can't really get out of, and you don't know what the passage is out of it. You kind of look at it and say, I can see it's an illusion. I can see these are programs. I can see humans are in oblivion. I can see they're controlled. How do I fix this? And to be able to go a little bit into that line of thought, I want to use two kind of analogies, as in one, how do we beat the construction, and two, the movie The Matrix. And that is about beating the illusion, but in what we call a more modern day version, because if you go back into the Hindu text and the true guru work with the chakra system, it was all about beating the illusion. We were living in an illusion, and the whole job, including in Buddhism, is with enlightenment, is to get the clarity to see things as they truly are. And what does that mean? What does that even mean, right? And that's where you discover that you are moving into a rabbit hole of Alice in Wonderland programmings that have an origin somewhere. So this is about, okay, I'm looking out, I'm seeing, I know the cubes, I see the technology, and typically the end of the month, for some odd reason, it becomes very clear to me. It's the same thing every month. I start up in the beginning of the month, I go into the illusion of the month, and then at the end of the month, I can see, okay, this is where we are now. And I always end up in this weird mechanical world where there are only cubes and grays and programs and nothing real. And it's nothing like the movie The Matrix. So it's not a mind trick or my mind is playing tricks on me, but it is kind of, I see through the illusion. I made the program of the month, and by that I can see the illusion. And how do I feel about seeing the illusion? I feel it's so dystopian. I feel sad. I feel distressed. I feel all sorts of things. And then I just go in, calm yourself down, do the observation. Don't get caught up in this understanding, because that's where I look in. Okay, all of that's the parasites that once used to be humans that have now been downsized due to being caught up in the illusion and in the programs and in the oblivion dynamics of reincarnation, have now become these TGs or parasitic entities that are now continue to exist within our energy system as part of us, as they are being moved around via the elementals and the recreation of our physical form. So it's pretty dystopian, right? It's not a happy view. It's not a kind of, oh yeah, I beat it this one. I just kind of fuck another program, which I just came to the end of it, see things as they truly are. Yeah, but this is what actually is. How do I get beyond that? How do I get moving out of that scenario? And that is where I kind of think to myself, okay, I am technically stuck inside this body. And again, it's dystopian, but let's entertain the idea instead of trying to find comfortable solutions to whatever's going on. I've been talking about it, but let us really investigate the lesser nice side of things. As in, okay, this body's an imprisonment suit. Literally, it prevents us from activating. It's kind of a downsized frequency organic vessel that ensures that no matter what we do, we will continuously continuously buy into the illusion. And how do we do that? How is that even possible? Well, we exist in it, for one. That's the first step. And everything in our reality, if you really think about it, sit down and really think about it, it's all about selling illusions. Nothing in this life is anything but illusions. I discovered that when I was younger, when I began working my way out of all of the emotional content and began getting into the mental sphere and seeing things from a little bit from outside. I just came to that conclusion. Well, the only reason why people are not really doing anything is because they are absorbed, merged into their emotional field. Their emotional field ensures that they will constantly be thinking about something. There will constantly be some emotion, some desire, some wish, some illusion of, if only I had this, if only things were that, if only this, if only whatever, then things would be better. And people are living that way. If only I have that job, then I can earn that money, then I can get that house. And they are building their lives on these dreams of what if only, what if I do so, then I'll get that. So that's the illusion that is running them. If I do this, then I get the right job, then I get the right clothes, then I get the right makeover, then I'll be popular, or whatever the desires are, or I get the leading position, I'll become the CEO, and then my life will be done. And then they get into the mid-50s and discover, no, it wasn't that at all. Then what is there? And that's where many begin their spiritual journey. And there they will not get far enough because they're so ingrained in the programs of spirituality there, because they have not beaten the machine yet. They have not really understood what they're up against. So coming to terms with the emotional field is the first thing that must be cleared, so we are in control of that one, as the Buddhists also discovered in their mindfulness, and how to observe the emotions and not really get connected to them. I've taken it a step further and say, yeah, today it's full of parasites. There might not be back in the Buddhist time, some 2,500 years ago, but it is now. So now we're having the emotional field is full of energetic parasites because our construction is breaking down, or that is the old version of it, because we're getting some new gray programs up and running. These are the ones I'm seeing, and it doesn't look good, people. It doesn't look good. So with that in mind, we can say, okay, we're taking it a step further and say all our emotional reactions are electrochemical processes due to inserted fields that are linked up to programs which houses what we call parasitic entities that are sparking them to life, because they have a life cycle where they need to get energy to live, and therefore they sustain via our emotional patterns to shorten it down to the core of what it really is. So whenever we are having an emotional rush of something, or depending on how strong it is, the trick is to go into energy work and get rid of the parasite, and by that you will discover that emotional reaction will dissipate quite quickly. And then it's up for us to find the pattern, and then find the field, and find the cube, and find the elemental, and find the inserted technology of the old world order type, clear it out, and then move further into, okay, repairing our energy system, repairing that level of our vibrational field, so that we begin to understand that all that we are part of, our reality is made of vibrational radiation energies. I want to finish this course too with the vibrational level, ending up in what we call vibrational auric fields, as I talk about in the book Tarology. And then in course 3, I will work with the mental field that leads up to the template. But here we need some kind of reality dynamics and understanding of the sciences behind our vibrational field and the different perception levels that goes with the reality we are part of. Because what we feel, what we have of vibration initiates a response mechanism from the programs that we are part of. And you really need to grasp this. This is technically the foundational sciences behind the law of karma, which means what you are is also principle 4. What you are will be reflected back to you. No more, no less. This is so important. I know many of you just right now, it's a theoretical exercise and don't really know the implications of it. But it does when you begin to not go into the movie The Matrix, but begin to understand that, because there is programs that are uploaded. Here we are talking about an interactive reality that responds to what you are. So that means if you change, reality change. It should originally be so. And that was part of the original Pillar project, which were part of the holographic teaching system and learning dynamics, as in, well, sometimes it's easier to experience what you are, what the ramifications are of it, than working artificially in what we call a virtual reality scenario, which they did in the Pleiadian system, where we would go into simulator, to use that expression, and there we would see it without causing harm. But here, because we were on the outskirts and was after the timeline event, we needed something more substantial to change our genetics. And therefore we had to build a reality that had different perception levels, different levels of dynamics, and different levels of mechanics, from where we would perceive reality in a specific way, which would then feedback loop into our energy system and show us what we needed to repair. That's still the foundation of the construction we're part of. It has been highly altered, but we do have a possibility now. We do have a moment in quote unquote time where they're shifting into the new programs and the old programs are falling apart. And I do not recommend staying in the old programs, because the more they fall apart, the more parasitic and more difficult they will be to clear out. They will become more and more obscure and distorted and really fucked up. And because of the elemental parasitic growth potential that leaves, and I'm here talking about the elementals in the racial grids, as well as the parasites in your body, energetic parasites in the artificial fourth dimension, where the old world programs are situated, and everything is collapsing there, and what is left will just be weird scavenger hybrids, all sorts of things you don't really want to be part of. So it's not a solution to wait till the program breaks down and then you get to who and what you are. On the contrary, you will be part of the feeding party that these forces in the artificial fourth dimension will live from, until they have nothing to live from, and then all of that will begin to scatter and go into devastation. And that's where either it turns transhuman or being taken over by the dark ones. So that's the fourth cycle. That's the future of the fourth cycle. So we would like to get beyond that one, and already now, with whatever's left of viable code streams in the fourth cycle, we will use that. And of course you can say, well, that's fucking unfair. We will then drag out what is left of viability and take it with us as we shift into the new reality, even though we are not part of the new reality programs, as I used in another series of information in the Changemaker material. I talk about that we will join the same highway as the rest of the races that are now moving into a higher level of our reality, into the fifth dimension. We will join that group because it's a highway. That's where all viability will go now, because both the parallel universal matrix as well as the whatever's left of the enhanced humans and whatever's going on in our reality field, everybody needs to go to the fifth dimension, because that's where we can reconnect to something that is not parasitic. We have other issues there, other dynamics. We have polarity. We'll have the dark forces. We'll have some of the old galactic wars. It's not better, but there are what we would call solutions that are easier to handle when we're talking about radiation energies, because there we talk code systems, and that's where we have the magicians of Atlantis and all these kind of things, which led to the downfall of Atlantis. So that's, of course, the big problem there. Similarly, as in the fourth cycle, our big problem was the fourth cycle after the fall of Atlantis, the reseeding under the Cyrenaes. And the Cyrenaes are technically the progenitors of that technology that is now chewing us up in energetic parasites and squid things and all sorts of entities in the fourth dimension that shouldn't be there. But it is, of course, part of also the Pleiadian genetics that have been highly contaminated and distorted before they began using it, because they were using a version of it from a system that were already dying when they were taking it. So this is, again, whenever we're talking about genetic modification and use technology, they always think, because it's not my line of thought, that if only we'll link it up to a specific cube or something, then it will maintain it as long as necessary. But they keep forgetting the timeline event dynamics, where everything is pulled into entropy. Everything is pulled into chaos, because the foundation of this reality after the timeline event is based upon dying, decaying energies and dying, decaying reality grids, which is why the timeline event and the sciences behind, as I talk about in the perception logs, were the worst worst idea ever. And again, one of the reasons why I got to such a discord with the councils and everybody, because I was just beginning to work against everybody that thought that, yeah, we can just use the technologies here and we'll get it within before it turns into distortion. But I saw how the infection rate grew and that it cloaked itself and people were not able to see that they got infected. So therefore I saw the council's member one by one getting the infection without knowing it. And once it hits, if you tell people they're infected, you won't listen because the ill-mindedness kicks in. The delusion kicks in. So that's the problem. Okay. So did I not get the infection? Well, I had already worked quite severely with building an energy system that would battle it. I still get it, but I battle it. And while I'm in it, I feel the delusion. I feel all the sorts of stuff that people are succumbing to when they get the infection. And whenever I'm in contact with the Dark One, I do the releasing work. That's why they put me into that job. But whenever I do that, I get the infection for a moment in time. It takes me 5, 6, 7 hours of energy work, but then I've cleared it and then I'm out of it. And afterwards, I always feel enormously drained. It's really severe, hard work. But I see how it works and I see what it does to your mind field and I see how it breaks down the radiation units. And the only thing that can clear it, as the guru teachings have been trying to teach people in the chakra system, that is the vibrational field. Keep yourself in light, then you won't get infected by what is in your mental field and connected to your template. And that is, of course, a strategy, but it doesn't take away the root of the problem, does it? It just keeps it at bay. So that's where we are. And that's also one of the reasons why we are in these trouble times that we are in, because we have had so many different races here that have not done what they were supposed to do and always thought, yeah, if only I did do this, I got this, right? Nobody got it at all whatsoever. Not even me. I'm here, aren't I? So none of us had it. And I think that's a good place when we do this work, that we are humble in our approaches here and understand that this is not an easy peasy thing to do, because we have fewer capacities now than we had back then, and we're still trying to solve the same problem. So as time passes by, we get fewer and fewer solution models and fewer viable genetics to solve it with. But that does not take away that we should keep trying until there is absolutely nothing left. And then we will do the devastation cycle where we will turn ourselves into dust and cease to exist completely, which is also a solution. We can't get out as light orbs. At least we can ensure that we don't continue in another shitty cycle somewhere. At least that's my approach. I can't ask of you to have that approach because you don't been around for so long as I have and tried so many solutions as I have. So you might still be in your more positive end of the spectrum of I can find solutions and you should continue to do so. But the matter of the fact is that we are surrounded by people that have given up. Because as they were trying to, or they got hijacked and they got into this body, it was kind of game over to a large degree. Only very, very few knew the true version of a reality. Only few had the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, and were able to do the maze and run the perception level programs as they were supposed to. And that was part of the secret society. So this is what was taught, and this is what was turned into religion. So at least the masses had some kind of what we call esoteric outer version of the trying to climb the perception levels to get into the heavens, whatever religion that was, or to get freedom, or sit by the right side of the gods, or whatever it was, doesn't matter, or just get a better life. The stories have been many, they've been vast, and they've been different times, different stories, different religions at different purposes with the religions. So that's part of the history of religion, if you like, and you can study that. I actually had a short moment where I thought, should I study that at university? I just got, I'm too bored. I know what's going on there. I can look it up on the internet. I don't need to take a bachelor's degree in it. But sometimes I get struck with just wanting to go back into the base program to say, fuck it. I'll just go back to university, get a full-time job, just live like everybody else, because what's the fucking point? And then I know, okay, delusion, disorientation, and what do you call it? Despair. That's the one, a 7D, right? You get into this feeling of, I just want to give up. But it's good to have these yo-yo approaches to the work that we do, because we can't always keep ourselves up in where I'll keep pushing and keep doing this. Sometimes we just have to crash a little bit and just because sometimes the parasites, they really hit a nerve, and that means they hit a vibrational field that is not cleared. And then they can really amplify some kind of emotion. Then the trick for us is to either sit still in meditation, lie down or do the clearing work, or sit in upright meditation, and then make sure that the mind field does not connect to that emotional override that is happening by the parasites. Get ourselves calmed down, especially if the storm is strong. Just had a hit like that last night. So I'm talking fresh out of, I just got a hit of something, and it was so strong that I couldn't just clear myself energetically, which I'd been trying before. It was enormously strong. So I chose to listen to music instead and distract myself and just keep myself calm, keeping my mind field occupied with something else, sitting up, doing the upright meditation, and then run the radiation energies until all of that had dispersed. And then I began tracking down the parasites and the field and whatever was going on. And of course, it was just past stuff that were related to a level of me I hadn't cleared, and they could just get that one because we have some really heavy energies right now here in end July, because they're shifting the reality program into the event program 3.0. So a lot of old stuff is being stirred up. And with that, prior to that, the evening before, I had this kind of flashback of my entire life kind of sensation. I actually had 2 days where I felt my entire life were running in rewind, seeing things, being in earlier versions of myself 8 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, and living by it as if it were really happening, which were really odd. I was mending a pair of trousers, and at the same time, I was completely in the airport of Copenhagen, getting ready to go to Australia, which again set emotional vibrations in play and put in specific type of energies, which led to the big crash yesterday, where there was another thing that I had experienced, which I probably hadn't dealt with because it was overwhelming. It had so many layers in it. So there are still remnant energies of the pattern that were built in me in 2018 when I was in Australia, where everything was really, 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 really bad. So therefore, there are these remnant fields and there are patterns that rises up according to the energies that are running our reality. And we can use it as a kind of clearing potential and use it as an opportunity to get ourselves out of patterns that we didn't know we have. But how is that possible that they can do so? And that's where I want to use the rest of the videos in this course, so we really nail that when we do the template sciences. Because I always said our template genetics will descend into our energy system, and there we will repair them by playing the original programs that were in the Pillar Project, and they were built up using the principles, the laws, and the rules. And this is what I want to explain here to the best of my abilities as far as I can push it, because only when you really understand the interactive reality that's why it was called, the Old World Order program was called the ISP, the Interactive Simulation Programs, which meant that what we were would be simulated and mirrored back to us. And since people were run by prohibiting technologies that led them into desires that had all focused on the materialistic world to keep up the materialistic aspects of our reality, people are creating this reality by what they wish. So if we could get everybody to wish something else, so to speak, our world would look different. If we could ever get everybody to really wake up and remember the original reality field, we would actually go back to it if they could clear themselves out of the prohibiting technologies. Otherwise, put technology up there so that if you should by chance get to this point as I am, where I have the clarity, I can see what's going on, there will be these different types of scanners and cubes that will detect that. And I'm pretty sure tomorrow it will be gone, because it will have cleared it and wiped me of that clarity level. It means I've cleared the distortion genetics and the distortion energies, which then allows my original consciousness units and reality perception to see through the overlay programs. And that's what I'm looking in. I'm seeing the mechanics of it, like the Truman Show, seeing the operating room and just saying, what the fuck fuck is going on? But the interesting thing is changing. These grays are different now. It's a different bunch. It's not the ones that were part of the old world order, which I used to see. They are kind of gone. That's part of the fourth. So I assume I'm getting into the fifth, where I can see the event program, because it's a fifth dimensional program. So that's what that's made for. And it's using one of our original perception levels, the PL5, to get there, the holographic programs and holographic teaching systems, which you will see on page 5. Very appropriately, by the way. So with that, we are here understanding, okay, when we're doing this work, we are dealing with the original programs that were put in for a healing purpose and not for an imprisonment purpose. But that's what was altered, so that they wanted us to be in physical forms. So they recreated the programs so that we would desire manifested things. That's why all religions and all esoteric, the true teachings, the esoteric, the inner teachings that were taught in the schools were always centered around being humble, being meek, not wanting to have power, not wanting to have materialistic goods. They were living in their whatever clothes they were wearing. They were only having their sandals and the cape or the clothes, their belt, and what they needed to eat. And they were living like traveling monks, as we're seeing within Buddhism as well. This is part of it. You need to get yourself away from that understanding where that the program itself, the reality itself that are under the false gods, as has been said as well, is all about focusing your attention on the materialistic side of reality, because by that you maintain the program. You're keeping up your materialistic reality, and by that you're keeping up your own type of body, and all of your desires and your wishes then creates this whole recircling circuit of what we call manifest frequency energies, which we know are emptiness. So what is it that actually activates it? We know from the quantum sciences that we influence reality. So by us having that coding and constantly being in that coding, or the majority of humans, well, then we keep that reality alive. They're keeping up their own prison, which is a geniusly thought of program. As long as people are interested and invested in that reality, it also looks as from the outside, this is how they've chosen to live, because it is. They're keeping it up by the things they're doing. And the more people that are here, and the more insectoids and the more lesser races that are coming that are very oriented towards sensual pleasure, the more sexual perversion we get, the more what we have seen it with production of materialistic goods. It's ridiculous how much we produce, but that's kind of the whole marketing, selling, dreams, markets that we have. Everything that is in this reality, it doesn't matter if it's furniture, or if it's clothes, or it's medicine, or it's health industry, or it's fitness, or it's going to work, or it's what we call stock markets, or it doesn't matter what it is. You are creating an item, and with that item is an illusion, is a dream of something. It has a quote unquote a purpose, which is the distorted version of the original purpose of what we were creating. So everything here has this kind of idea to it. If you look at it, you say that's what you know, because, for instance, if you look at a USB stick, you kind of know, yeah, that's for that one, that's for that. But why is it? It's because it's coded into it. When you look at it, you'll really see that's what it's coded to do. But that's also an illusion, and that's where I wanted to do a little bit of analogy with the movie The Matrix, because that is technically a frequency overlay. It's not really there. It's running on something entirely else. The whole idea of things being stored into a little chip is not something we have invented. It's a version of alien technology that's been downsized into our program. So this is where I am today. I'm looking through everything. I'm seeing the program. I'm seeing the codes of it. I'm seeing my lip balm here, and I just see there, yeah, what's made of is just a bunch of chemicals. Why do I think it helps my lips, etc.? So this is where I'm looking at everything. So that's the clarity when you get it. That's why I want to do the movie The Matrix, because there he has that vision. He can see the binary codes and everything. I feel a little bit like that today. So that's why it's suitable for me to do this teaching today. I've just been waiting for that to surface so I could explain it while I'm in it, because it's not easy to explain when you're out of it. There you can say it and you can kind of remind yourself this is how it was, but it's easier when you're in it, such as do another example that you can definitely relate to, as in kind of when you're in love, you can talk about what it means to be in love, but you don't really know what it means to be in love unless you are in love. Not that I'm recommending that. That's a high distorted program that links us up to another human and their energy fields, and by that, in our holy matrimony, sharing our distortions with each other and technically taking each other down as two blind people, thinking that we are getting a better life due to the illusions in the programs of relationships. We are then being led down a rabbit hole where it's very difficult to get out, because we get so entangled emotionally, mentally, physically, on all levels of our being, and by that prevents us from activating as individual beings that are able to work our way through the perception levels, because we're never supposed to do that as couples or 2 and 2 or as teams. This is an individual activation process of your energy system as well as your original template genetics. But it was put into a setting of a reality where when we work through the different pillars, could do teamwork at least until we got to the pillar 410. And that's where we have the highest level of it, where we learn governance. And once we've learned what other people are all about, we can then begin to go our own ways, as in specializing within different programs. That was the original ideas. And that's perception level 5, where you can work with people. It's okay to be with people, but you don't need people. So you can choose to be on your own, which I chose for a very long time. So I don't really have that desire. I have other ways of interacting with reality, because once you get to the perception level 5, you are in close contact with everything, as I'm saying, with looking at things. So you feel things, as most people are only feeling when they're around other people, or they feel in love, or they get sexually aroused, or they have some kind of desire and they have the satisfaction experiencing it with other people. That's the only place where they don't feel alone. So they are doing this technically because they have a program that scares the shit of them to feel alone, as in kind of being isolated unit, which they are, as long as they are caught up in the lower order energies. But the moment you breach that and you get into the density energies, you'll realize you're never alone. You're interconnected with everything. And that's not unity consciousness. That is some kind of enlightened perspective. It has been and has been sold as such. But the moment you get there, you understand, oh, fuck, I got a lot of work to do here, because this does not look good, people. And so it's very little to do with sitting in bliss and enlightenment and be connected in unity consciousness, and everything's good and fine, and you feel sources in you. I've been there. It's actually a program, and it is part of one of the rabbit holes of the spiritual program, so that people that could breach through into the 4th dimension get stuck there. On the highest level of that one, it's actually where they should breach through that bubble of light they are seeing and go beyond and say what's behind here, and use that light to take down the prohibiting technology that is technically isolating them in their emotional field. Is the top level of the emotional field is to break down the illusion of God, as well as breaking down the illusion of enlightenment and breaking down the illusion of spiritual samadhi. I would put enlightenment is technically some of the things that we will break down as we work through the mental field. But the spiritual vibrational samadhi, as the gurus talked about, is that being in that sphere of light, being in that moment where you actually reach the light bubble, and you will discover that you will go through many of these light bubbles, because they are part of the different tunnels of light, so to speak, between the different perception levels of the programs. Meaning that once you master the base program to a degree on a specific level, you will then have that vision where you will first be trialed by holographic counsel. That's technology that will scan you, and then you will see a gate of light, and you will go through it, and you will get into another perception level where you will continue your clearing work. That's what the Bailey material calls initiations. I've here made it as the original program. If you prefer reading the Alice A. Bailey material about the initiations, you can read the different material that are part of it, the teachers of the 6 rays or some of her other material. But there you also have in White Magic, in the book on White Magic, as well as the initiations and these kind of things. She talks about how you get in front of the planetary hierarchy, and where Sanat Kumara with his staff will let you pass into a higher level, into the different initiations, of which there are, I think, what did she say, 9? I can't remember how many initiations. She keeps running on the number of 7. So she probably does it with the 7 rays, but all of this leads to different initiations you have to take. And we could say there are 7 initiations, but the first 3 are technically not the real initiations, because they are the way you work your way through the biofield, the emotional field, the mental field. And once you have learned to master these, then you technically can take the first initiation, where you begin to move beyond what this reality offers us of illusions. So, and that's also why she makes the book on glamour, where she says everything is illusion, which all of the ones that have done the esoteric teachings also teaches. So that's part of it, seeing through the illusions. And the whole hierarchy of understanding is also what you see in Freemasonry and in the Golden Dawn communities, and etc., etc. All the things that have been, what we could say, an attempt to climb up the pyramid to get to the eye of the needle, which is perception level 6, which you are also seeing shown on the dollar bill, where you get up there with the all-seeing eye, where you go through the eye of the needle, where you're looking at where God will scan you, so to speak, the top level alien technology, and then you are out of the restoration program, you're out of this reality. So that's what we're dealing with here. That's why I made it in that version, and it is the reason why I made that version, not using the New Order of the Ages pyramid with the all-seeing eye on the top, because that is what God is. That's perception level 6, the core domain constructions, where you look into, okay, this is where consciousness per se is situated, but you will also discover that the core domain constructions are also administered by some pretty advanced beings, which in our reality field are a part of what we call the original worlds. The LPU never had the core domain constructions as we understand of it. And that's why when I keep talking about the LPU and how we're building here, we have the outer domain, middle domain, inner domain, and core domain. There's just 4 levels, but that's the core domain of the LPU. And then we were to go through the core domain there that were in the LPU programs and get into the 5th level. Again, the 5th dimension, the 5th level. That's why we're all heading for that one, because that's where the gateways are out, where we begin to reconnect to the original density field, and by that begin to work with the 6 levels of reality, where we really learn to work the pillar project itself. So again, 3-step ladder out of the construction, into the original reality field, out of the original reality field because it's not in a good state, and begin to do the elevation dynamics with whatever's left of the original pillar projects. The technologies are gone, but the knowledge is still there, and it's part of our energy system. And as I said, our energy system creates the reality we're part of. So if we could all activate our original energy system, we could technically recreate the density 1 in its original version of the LPU in its 12 lineage setup, part of the pillar project, where we technically have 6 perception levels. But these 6 perception levels I'm here talking about are the ones that were put in the restoration program and are part of the step ladder build-up, where we learn to work on the different perception levels of reality via the reality programs that we now know as the pillars, and that is where I want to continue in the next video. So we will continue with that one, going to page we'll still be on page 5, where we'll begin the 1-7 pillar work, the law of the one, linking it up to the reality pyramidic build-up, understanding this is technically the same as what the esoteric societies worked with, the Freemasons, what have you, when they talked about learning to master one level, so that you would ignite the correct type of energy, the correct type of understanding of that energy, master that energy, from where you would be learning to transform that energy in the opposition dynamics I've taught you in transition science classes, and by that rebuild the original version of perception level 1, where you have a full understanding of the energy units in the code layers of Pillar 1-7, from which you will be able to recreate your original physical vessel. But it is a little bit enveloped, because if you're doing the linear line of thought, you will understand that, yeah, that's not really what we're doing with, because many of us, we're kind of stuck in perception level 4 with the projection fields and the governance of our reality, and our emotional fields are connected to the artificial 4th dimension, which goes with the downsized, or the what we call the hijacker version of Pillar 410, as well as we say we don't really have connection to our reality field and code streams of Pillar or Perception Level 3. And Perception Level 2, the racial grids and the joint fields, we don't have that either, but that is what the original Pillar project were built up of. So we have, that's the original pyramidical structure, or you could do it the circular way, which you have seen in the whole philosophy book, as well as in earlier versions of this course material. So you could do it that way, or you could do it the pyramidical way. The circular way is better with the concentric circles, because there you can kind of, you can go back and forth. But when we do the perception level, and on this one, to master the construction, we must think of it as a pyramid, where we master the base program, as you know from the ISP, and the perception level 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the distorted version of it. And perhaps for the sake of it, I should put that one in, or the ISP program, at some point. And at the same time, perhaps not, because here I actually don't want you to focus on what is falling apart and should not be given energy, but actually focus on what it should be and how we can modify that into a version that we now understand. So this is the approach I will have. Instead of showing you what is now moving away and are being disassembled as the Old World Order interactive simulation program, and we had the chance to beat that one back in 2016, where I made that material, but we are now moving beyond that. So perhaps it's a better strategy just to show you this is how it's supposed to be, and this is how you work with it now, founding it on the original dynamics instead of founding it on the dysfunctional technologies that are now falling apart. So until then, see you in next video.